The dirtiest trick Machiavelli ever understood about desire is brutally simple. The more certain someone feels about having you, the less space you occupy in their mind. And that is where most men get it completely backwards. They think attention creates attraction. They think constant communication builds connection. They believe that if they just give her enough affection, enough reassurance, enough of themselves, she will naturally become more invested. But the human mind does something far more interesting. It becomes fixated on what it cannot completely resolve. That is the psychological engine behind making someone think about you when you are nowhere near them. You create a gap between what she knows and what she wants to know. Then her own imagination starts doing the work for you. Think about a song that gets stuck in your head. You hear the chorus once. Hours later, you are still replaying it without choosing to. The song is no longer playing, yet your mind keeps supplying it. That is the principle. What occupies the mind is not always what is present. Sometimes, it is what remains unfinished. Machiavelli understood the power of perception, uncertainty, and controlled access. And when those forces are applied to attraction, something fascinating happens. You stop trying to force your way into her attention. Instead, you create the conditions that make her attention return to you on its own. A pause becomes a question. A little distance becomes curiosity. A conversation that ends before she has completely figured you out can stay alive in her thoughts long after the conversation itself is over. And that is the part most people miss. The goal is not to disappear and play childish games. It is not to punish her with silence. It is not about pretending you do not care. The real power comes from becoming a man whose attention has value because it is deliberate. You are present when you genuinely want to be present. You speak because you have something worth saying. You leave because your life does not stop simply because she entered it. That difference changes everything. Because when your behavior becomes predictable, the brain has very little reason to keep analyzing it. But when there is genuine uncertainty inside a meaningful connection, the mind starts asking questions. What does he really think? Why did he say that? Why did he leave then? What is he doing right now? And once those questions begin repeating, you are no longer simply a person she interacted with. You have become a mental reference point. Machiavelli's darkest lesson was never about chasing control through force. It was about understanding that perception shapes reality. If you can control how often you reveal yourself, how much access you give, and how clearly you communicate your intentions, you influence the story the other person tells themselves about you. And sometimes, the story becomes more powerful than the reality. That is where the real trick begins, because the man who desperately tries to be remembered usually becomes forgettable. The man who has his own direction, his own standards, and enough restraint to leave something unresolved can become surprisingly difficult to forget. So in this video, we are going to break down exactly how that psychological mechanism works, how to create curiosity without looking needy, how to use absence without becoming manipulative or immature, how to make your presence feel different from the endless attention she receives from everyone else, and most importantly, how to understand the psychological principle underneath it all, so you are not memorizing some cheap dating trick. You are learning how attention actually works, because once you understand that, you stop trying to occupy her world by force. You start becoming the thought her own mind keeps coming back to. And here comes the part most men completely misunderstand. When she reaches for you emotionally, you don't rush to match her intensity. You stay composed. You let the moment breathe. Think about it. A man who answers every message instantly, explains every feeling, and constantly proves his interest leaves nothing for her mind to wonder about. But when you have your own direction, your own standards, your own life moving forward, something changes. She starts asking herself questions. Why didn't he chase that conversation? What is he thinking? Does he actually need me? I once watched a man lose a woman's interest in a single week simply by becoming too available. He thought he was building connection. He was removing tension, and that's the uncomfortable truth. Attention becomes valuable when it has boundaries. The Machiavellian principle is simple. Control the emotional rhythm by controlling yourself first. Be warm when you mean it. Step back when the interaction has run its course. Don't manufacture jealousy. Don't play childish games. Just stop making her the center of your world. Because the moment she realizes your life keeps moving whether she is watching or not, she starts wondering where she fits inside it. And a man who cannot be easily read is often far harder to forget. She starts feeling drawn to you without fully understanding why, and that is where the psychology gets dangerous. Once a woman cannot neatly place you, her mind starts doing the work. She replays conversations, she remembers small details. She wonders why you pulled back, what you meant, what you were thinking. Have you ever caught yourself doing that with someone? One unanswered question can occupy more mental space than 10 clear answers. That is the mechanism. You become less like a person she has figured out, and more like a story with missing pages. But there is a line here. Real mystery comes from having depth, boundaries, and a life of your own. Manufactured confusion eventually looks exactly like what it is: manipulation. The man who never needs to chase approval has something different about him. His attention feels chosen. Imagine knocking on a door. If it is always wide open, you barely notice it. But if you know there is something valuable behind it, and you can enter only when invited, your curiosity changes. That is what scarcity does to attention. Expectation can become more powerful than reality because the mind keeps completing the picture. She may start filling the blanks with qualities you never even claimed to have. And this is where most men sabotage themselves. They feel attraction, then panic. They text again. They explain themselves. They seek reassurance. They rush to remove every moment of uncertainty. I've seen this pattern countless times. A man finally gets the woman's attention, then becomes so desperate to keep it that he destroys the very tension that created it. He gives away everything before she has earned the privilege of discovering anything. Machiavelli's principle, stripped of the theatrics, is control of your own emotional rhythm. Be warm when you mean it. Be unavailable when you're genuinely occupied. Let conversations end naturally. Keep your standards when you're attracted. You don't need to manufacture jealousy. You don't need to disappear for 3 days. You don't need to become some emotionless caricature. You simply stop making her reaction the measure of your worth, and that changes the dynamic. She may start thinking, why isn't he trying harder? Then another thought appears. Maybe I actually want him more than he wants me. That is the moment the attention turns inward. She starts evaluating herself. What does he see in me? Did I say too much? Should I message him? Why am I even thinking about this? Notice what happened. You didn't force the thought into her head. She created it herself, and self-generated thoughts are powerful because the mind treats them as its own conclusions. That's the real psychological edge. You don't become unforgettable by demanding attention. You become memorable by leaving enough substance behind that her mind keeps returning to the unanswered question. And when she starts defending your behavior to herself, he's probably busy, he's different, he has his own world. Something important has happened. She is no longer simply observing you. She's building the explanation for you. And once someone starts investing emotional energy into understanding you, the connection has moved from the outside world into their inner world. That is where you either build genuine attraction or create a game that eventually collapses under its own weight. This is where the psychology gets even darker. You become harder to read. She gets warmth from you. Then the conversation ends naturally. You show interest, but you don't rush to prove it. A look lingers. A short message lands differently than she expected. Suddenly, she's wondering, what does he actually want? And here's the uncomfortable part. When someone has to keep updating their interpretation of you, they keep thinking about you. But there is another layer. You don't announce your value. You demonstrate it by having a life that doesn't collapse when she walks away. Your goals continue. Your attention has limits. You carry yourself like a man who expects to be respected. I've seen how quickly this changes a dynamic. The moment a man stops trying to convince a woman he's valuable, she gets the chance to decide whether she sees it for herself. That distinction matters. Imagine a shop window with one item left. You weren't interested 5 minutes ago. Then you notice someone else reaching for it. Suddenly, you look twice. Scarcity sharpens attention, but don't fake competition. Don't brag about women. Don't manufacture jealousy. That's insecurity wearing a costume. Real scarcity comes from being genuinely difficult to replace because your life, standards, and presence have substance. Eventually, she feels something subtle. I could actually lose this man, and that thought changes everything. Because once there are no guarantees, curiosity becomes tension, tension becomes attention, and attention keeps bringing you back into her mind, close enough to feel real, distant enough to remain unresolved. That is the psychological border where a man becomes difficult to forget. The dirtiest part of Machiavelli's lesson goes deeper than simple attraction. Obsession feeds on what feels unfinished. Think about the last woman who left you wondering, what did I do wrong? You probably remember that uncertainty more vividly than 100 conversations that went perfectly. That is the mechanism. When a woman cannot fully read your intentions, her mind keeps returning to the missing piece. What does he actually want? Why is he different with me? Do I really have him? But here's where most men get it wrong. The answer isn't to become cold or play games. It's to become a man whose attention has standards. You can look at her without seeking approval, listen without losing your center, show interest without handing over your entire emotional world. I've learned that the moment you stop trying to prove your value, people get a chance to discover it for themselves, and mystery is simply controlled access. You don't tell a stranger your entire life in the first conversation. You reveal enough to create connection, then let the rest unfold naturally. A story with every page exposed has nowhere left to go, but leave a few pages for later, and curiosity takes over. She starts imagining your world, your ambitions, what you think when you're silent, what else exists beneath the surface. And now something subtle happens. She's no longer responding only to the man standing in front of her. She's responding to the version of you her own imagination has created. That's the real Machiavellian edge. You don't need to lie. You simply stop explaining yourself into irrelevance. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can leave behind is a question. The less you rush to reveal, the more room you leave for curiosity. And there comes a moment when she starts questioning herself. Did I say too much? Did I misread him? Should I message him? You didn't demand anything. You simply stayed composed. That's the difference between being reactive and being selective. A man who jumps every time his phone lights up gives away control of his own attention. A man with direction decides when he engages because his life doesn't stop for a notification. I've seen this play out in real life. A guy gets a woman's attention, then becomes terrified of losing it. Suddenly he's double texting, explaining every silence, trying to keep the conversation alive at all costs, and the attraction dies under the weight of his anxiety. The stronger move is quieter. You let her make an effort too. You let her wonder. You allow space for her to choose whether she wants to come closer. Because here's the psychological shift. When someone invests voluntarily, they become more emotionally involved. She may reread your message, notice the smallest details, talk about you with a friend, wonder what you meant. At that point, your job isn't to manipulate the process, it's to avoid sabotaging it. Don't manufacture jealousy, don't punish her with silence, don't create confusion just to feel powerful. Give her something real to respond to. Then let her imagination finish the sentence, because the most memorable person isn't always the one who says the most. Sometimes, it's the one whose presence leaves a question behind. The dirtiest part of Machiavelli's lesson comes down to one idea: be a possibility, never a guarantee. The mind clings to what feels unfinished. Think about the last message you sent and never got answered. You probably remember that silence more clearly than 10 conversations that went perfectly. That's why genuine mystery works. You're present enough to create connection, but you still have a life that exists beyond her. You don't become an open book, and you don't become a wall. You leave something unfinished, a conversation that could have continued, a thought she didn't completely understand, a moment that felt meaningful, then simply ended. And now her mind has somewhere to go. What did he mean by that? Why was he so warm yesterday? Why didn't he chase today? Those questions are powerful because she creates the answers herself. But here's where I would draw a hard line. Don't manufacture confusion just to keep someone hooked. That's insecurity disguised as strategy. Real unpredictability comes from having priorities. Maybe you're training, maybe you're working late, maybe you're with friends, maybe you're simply having a quiet night with your phone across the room. Your world keeps moving, and she notices. Suddenly, your absence isn't a punishment. It's evidence that your life doesn't orbit around her. That changes the way your presence feels. When you're there, she enjoys it. When you're gone, she remembers it. And sometimes that's enough to make a person realize how much attention they've been giving you. The darkest truth here is surprisingly simple. People rarely obsess over what is completely resolved. They return to what still has a question attached to it. So don't try to become a mystery by acting strange. Become a man with enough depth that there is naturally more to discover. A life she doesn't fully see, a mind she doesn't instantly decode, a direction that existed before she arrived, because scattered pages can create curiosity, but a complete book with depth creates something far more powerful, the desire to keep reading. Another layer is selective presence. You don't need to be everywhere. You need to be memorable when you are there. Say something that stays with her. Hold eye contact a second longer. Show genuine interest, then return to your own life. I've seen this before. A man can spend 3 hours talking to a woman and leave almost no impression. Another can have one honest conversation with her and somehow stay in her head for days. Why? Because attention isn't measured in minutes. It's measured in impact. When you leave naturally, the interaction has an aftertaste. She remembers the look, the sentence, the feeling, and then something interesting happens. She starts comparing. The guy who texts constantly, the guy who needs reassurance, the guy who is always available. Then she remembers you. That's when your difference becomes visible without you announcing it. But here's the line most men miss. Don't manufacture scarcity. Don't disappear to punish her. Don't create jealousy just to feel powerful. Let your absence come from a life that genuinely has somewhere else to go. Because when she has to choose whether to reach out, continue the conversation, or make the next move, she's investing something of herself. And people tend to value what they willingly invest in. One message becomes another. Curiosity becomes attention. Attention becomes emotional investment. You didn't demand it, she chose it. And that is far more powerful. The goal isn't to make her dependent on you. It's to become memorable enough that when you're gone, the interaction doesn't disappear with you. Your presence ends, but the feeling remains. The trick gets stronger when you create a feeling of emotional exclusivity without pretending she owns your attention. You don't constantly tell her she's special. You make one moment feel special, a look that lingers, a conversation that suddenly becomes deeper, a sentence that makes her feel genuinely seen. Then you return to your life. That contrast can stay with someone far longer than endless compliments ever could. But here's where men often lose themselves. They experience one intense moment, then panic and start chasing the feeling. More texts, more reassurance, more attention, and suddenly the mystery is gone. Real confidence is being able to create connection without becoming dependent on it. She may start wondering, was that moment real? Did he feel what I felt? That question has weight. And when your life is already full, your work, your goals, your friends, your ambitions, your attention feels chosen rather than desperate. That's the difference. Don't manufacture uncertainty. Don't disappear to punish her. Don't turn dating into psychological warfare. Let your unpredictability come from having a life she cannot completely schedule. One day you're deeply engaged in a conversation. Another day, you're simply busy living. She notices the change. Did something shift? Maybe nothing did. But now she's paying attention, and that is the real psychological mechanism. Attention follows uncertainty, but trust follows consistency. The strongest man understands both. He can create intrigue without creating chaos. He can leave an impression without begging to be remembered. And eventually, his presence carries something unusual. When he's there, she feels it. When he's gone, she notices the space he left behind. There is one part of this psychology most men completely miss. Silence creates space. When you don't rush to explain every thought, every feeling, every move, you leave room for curiosity. And curiosity has a way of becoming emotional investment. But understand the distinction. You are not withholding affection to punish her. You're simply not handing over your entire world on day one. Your life already has direction. Your goals existed before she arrived. Your attention has boundaries. That alone changes the dynamic. I've seen men make the same mistake again and again. They meet a woman they really like. Then suddenly she becomes the center of everything. Every notification matters. Every delayed reply feels personal. They start chasing reassurance, and that desperation is felt. A grounded man can care deeply without losing himself. She can feel that you want her, while also knowing you'd be fine without her. That's powerful, because it creates a genuine choice. I want to be part of his world, and then investment begins naturally. She reaches out, she remembers something you said, she makes an effort to see you. She starts wondering what you're thinking. Those small acts matter because people tend to value what they actively participate in. But don't turn this into emotional whiplash. You don't need to manufacture hot and cold behavior. Real confidence has rhythm without manipulation. Sometimes you're playful, sometimes serious, sometimes vulnerable, sometimes completely focused on your own life. You're still the same man underneath it all, and that's the real mystery. There is always more to discover because you actually have depth. You don't become unforgettable by keeping someone permanently confused. You become unforgettable when the connection feels real, yet your entire identity cannot be consumed in one conversation. You leave the chapter open, and when there's something worth discovering on the next page, people keep reading. The darkest part of this psychology is understanding where obsession actually grows. It grows in the imagined future. A woman can enjoy your company today and forget it tomorrow. But if she starts imagining what could happen next, the story continues even when you're gone. That's why anticipation can feel stronger than reality. Think about waiting for a message you really want. The phone hasn't even moved, yet your mind has already imagined the conversation, the outcome, the possibility. That's the power of an unfinished story. But here's where men destroy it. They become so desperate to secure the connection that they explain everything, reveal everything, and rush to guarantee the future. Mystery disappears. A stronger approach is simpler. Let the relationship develop at its natural pace. Show interest, then return to your life. Be present without becoming permanently available. If she notices you're quieter one day, let her notice. Maybe you're working, training, seeing friends, living. You don't need a theatrical disappearance. Because the moment your attention becomes something she has to earn rather than something you automatically surrender, she becomes more aware of its value. And when you occasionally reveal something personal, a genuine vulnerability, a private ambition, a side of yourself most people never see, it can land harder because it feels earned. She thinks, why did he tell me that? Now the moment has meaning. That's the real difference between mystery and manipulation. Manipulation creates confusion. Depth creates curiosity, and when you're gone, she remembers the moments that actually meant something. The laugh, the look, the sentence that caught her off guard, the conversation that ended before either of you expected it to. Those memories can replay because the emotional experience was real. You don't need to leave someone emotionally wounded to become memorable. You simply need to understand one brutal truth. People remember what made them feel something, so stop trying to control her mind. Control yourself. Build a life that doesn't revolve around her attention. Give her genuine moments worth remembering. Leave room for the connection to breathe. Because the strongest kind of presence doesn't demand to be remembered. It simply leaves an impression and lets the other person decide whether they want to come back for more. And now we reach the final piece of Machiavelli's darkest lesson. It is the illusion of destiny. A woman doesn't need you to announce, "We're meant to be." In fact, saying it too early usually kills the magic. What creates that feeling is smaller. A look that lasts half a second longer. A conversation that suddenly becomes personal. One sentence that lands at exactly the right moment. I've had moments like that myself. Nothing dramatic happened, no grand confession, yet somehow, hours later, I was still thinking about the conversation. That's how the mind works. It takes a small emotional signal, and if the feeling is strong enough, it builds a much larger story around it. She starts wondering what could happen between you, and here's the dangerous part. The story in her head can become bigger than anything you could have said directly. She remembers the look, replays the conversation, imagines what you might have meant, then she connects the dots herself. But understand something important. You don't need to manufacture a fantasy or deceive her into one. Give her something real enough to remember, then let her imagination do what imagination naturally does. Because the moment you start performing a fake persona, you become trapped inside it. You have to keep pretending, keep calculating, keep maintaining the illusion. That's not power, that's insecurity, with better tactics. Real power is simpler. You become a man whose life has substance even when nobody is watching. Your discipline exists without applause. Your goals continue without female validation. Your standards don't disappear because you're attracted to someone. And when a woman enters that world, she doesn't become the center of it. She becomes someone you genuinely choose to share it with. That's a completely different kind of attraction. Most men try to be remembered by being constantly present. They text, they explain, they chase, they overgive. Then they wonder why she stopped feeling the same tension. But presence is easy to consume. Impact is harder to forget. Think about a scent on an old jacket. The person is gone, but one trace remains, and suddenly your mind takes you somewhere else. That's what emotional memory does. A moment ends, but the feeling survives. So if you want her to think about you, stop obsessing over how to control her thoughts. Create moments worth remembering. Be genuinely interesting. Keep your own direction. Let your attention have boundaries. And when you leave, leave with dignity. No punishment, no games, no desperate attempt to make her chase you. Because the deepest Machiavellian lesson isn't about controlling another person. It's about mastering yourself so completely that you no longer need to control anyone. And that's the part most men miss. The coldest man in the room isn't the one who makes everyone afraid of losing him. It's the man who knows he will survive either way. He can love without begging, desire without surrendering his identity, walk away without collapsing. And when a woman feels that, she doesn't feel trapped. She feels the weight of a choice. Maybe she wants to come closer. Maybe she doesn't. Either way, you remain standing. And that is the real power. Because the ultimate goal was never to become the thought she cannot escape. It was to become the man who doesn't need to be chased, validated, or remembered to know his own value. Unshaken men move differently. And once you understand that, you stop trying to control the game. You become the man who can walk away from it. If this video changed the way you think about attraction, prove you understood the lesson. Go to the comments and write, "Mystery creates desire." No explanation, no context, just those 3 words. Let's see how many men actually understood what Machiavelli knew about attention, absence, and the power of the unanswered question. In the next video, I'm going to break down the psychological test women use when they feel they're starting to lose control of a man. If you think you understand the game now, wait until you see what happens when she realizes she can't predict you. But for now, click the video appearing on your screen. It takes what you just learned about attraction and psychological tension and reveals the next layer you need to understand. Subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's video, and if this gave you a different perspective, leave a like. Most men will never understand the game, but you do. I'll see you among the few.